Hi all, in this video we will be discussing the Group 2 assignment, the communications plan. At this point you have created the project definition document and the work breakdown structure as a group. You've taken what one student in the group has done and you've made edits for that, and you are going to use that to inform the communications plan as well as the schedule. We'll get into the schedule in a later video. As you can see here, I have provided a template. The communications plan is the cornerstone of implementation for any project or program. It is essential to understand what messages you are intending to convey, who your audience is, and how they will best receive the information. Unplanned communications will almost always arise in any project or program implementation. However, having a solid understanding of these points will improve your ability to respond appropriately. Before you begin working on this, it is very important to remind everyone to make sure that you have read through the materials in the modules related to communication and planned communications. This is very essential to make sure that you understand who you're reaching. Thinking through all of the information about the 5K, the documents that you have created up until this point are continuing to build on each other. You can see that communications is going to fit in there as well. It is not the same thing as the work breakdown structure. Please make sure you remember that. You can see here communications plan should be submitted in table format. You should include a total of 8 weeks at least of planned communications for the phases listed. The amount of time spent on each phase is different for every project. Some groups may have 6 weeks of planning, 1 week of implementation, and 1 week of post-implementation evaluation, while other students might have 2 weeks of planning, 4 weeks of implementation, and 2 weeks of post-implementation evaluation. It is specific to your project. Phases are as follows: planning, implementation, post-implementation, evaluation. Since you are all doing a one-time event of the 5K, you will most likely have 1 to 2 days of implementation. Okay, so the majority of your work will be done on the front end, creating the planned communications to send out. You will also have that week of the actual race, whereas you might send communications right before and during the actual race. And then the following few days might be that post-implementation. So just because this provides some information, this is talking broadly about how groups are to break up their planning, implementation, and post-implementation. The point is, it needs to make sense for your particular project. Okay, make sure that you use planning, implementation, and post-implementation evaluations as your phases. That will also pertain to, that has been the case for your work breakdown structure. It will also be highlighted in your schedule. You must include at least 3 forms of communications per week. Examples of communications: emails, conference calls, face-to-face interactions, video conferencing, meetings, etc. Each form of communication will require a separate row in the chart. This means you will have at least 24 rows of communications. Include the following information for each communication item in your chart. Failure to include any of the following will result in a loss of points. You'll make sure you include the date the item is to be sent or the meeting is to be held, the purpose of the communications item. For example, this might be just 2 words or just 1 word. You might say something like the purpose might be registration, and then the key messages to be conveyed. What is the platform for registration? You would make sure that you elaborate on the purpose of the communications item. You'll include the sender, who is actually sending the message, who is hosting the meeting, who is in charge of that particular type of communications. Who is the receiver? This might be a group. It might be 1 person. This might be 2 or 3 people. Make sure you are specific. What method of communication are you using? If you're using email, will a follow-up be needed? You need to make sure that that the follow-up is also included for every single communication item. Sometimes you'll have no for multiple communication items. However, make sure that you think through that critically to say, would we actually need to follow up on communication for this particular item? Please let me know if you have questions, but make sure you use all of your resources before you do. Have a great day.